Okay, it was requested that I do a part 2 on the ninjutsu politics. So this is the part 2 to that video. In the previous one I talked about the indiscrepancies in the Bujinkan's lineage and how a lot of the politics coming from the Bujinkan attacking other practitioners is kind of, pointless, considering, there's massive holes in their lineage. Now I want to talk about something more specific. For those of you who see my review of Jeremy Schmidt's Koga-Ryu Ninjutsu book, I apologize for the truck, you do understand that, as I stated before, there's no proven school of ninjutsu. There's no Densho on ninjutsu. No one has any sort of scrolls or certificates showing a lineage to ninjutsu. Even the martial arts schools like Katori Shinto Ryu, which is a samurai school, actually doesn't has ninjutsu in their curriculum, but the ninjutsu in their curriculum is only taught by word of mouth. Their Densho mention ninjutsu, but they only mention it as it's a subject that is taught, and it is a kuden. It is a secret technique that is only taught by word of mouth. There might be Densho that mention ninjutsu, but there's no actual Densho for ninjutsu explaining what it is. Most of the historical documents, which has been recovered and translated by the Historical Ninjutsu Research Team by Anthony Cummings, what those are documents who were written by either after the golden era of ninjutsu, after the Warring States period of Japan's shogunate era, or they were written during the end of it when the skills of ninjutsu were less applied, less useful. Now, it's important to realize that, the years prior to the Meijin resurrection, restoration, I should say, the Meijin restoration, that the imperial government pretty much didn't have very much power at all, and even during the early years of the Meijin restoration, did the Japanese government have, or the imperial government have a great deal of power. Now, that needs to be stated so that you understand this. The era of peace that was brought about under, ironically, Oda Nobunaga, even though he is Obunaga, even though Obunaga is often seen as being the bad guy for going in and moving into the Koga-Iga region, specifically the Iga region, and his war against the Iga, the notorious Iga no Ran, it's important to realize that that he was establishing peace. That these Jesus samurai, these country samurai who were living in the mountains, pretty much had their own nation. They pretty much controlled everything, and they were isolated, so no one really dealt with them. Ninjutsu was such a prominent thing for them that to be one of the many names for the ninja historically was Iga no Ran. I'm sorry, not Iga no Ran, but Iga no Mano, meaning man of Iga, or Koga no Mano, man of Koga. So what you have is that it was so expected for samurai of that region, to even Ashigaru, to be trained in some aspects of ninjutsu to such an extent that everyone from that area was expected to be trained in ninjutsu. And so the thing to bear in mind was, the samurai of the Iga and the Koga area of Japan were so strife with internal struggle between one house and another, so much infighting and civil war, trying to take control and dominate, that it was pretty much very similar to robber barons, powerful criminal cartels, terrorist organizations in some third world countries where criminals cartels, terrorists have more power than the government themselves, which was very much a situation they dealt with during the shogunate era. So Oda Nobunaga was actually, ironically, the good guy. Many times he is portrayed as the bad guy, but he was in fact the good guy. He was seeking to establish peace, and to do so he had to establish peace to the most heavily war-torn area. So, I mean, it's an interesting subject in and of itself. The Iga and Koga areas of the mountains of Japan were almost like a frontier within the borders of the government or within the nation of Japan. They were almost a frontier within that nation. So in understanding this, a lot of ninjutsu was put to text, was put in book form, was created and put in the Densho, primarily for no other reason that it was falling into decline. So the people who put this stuff to the Densho did so that they could preserve some element of it in case at some point these methods needed to be used again, that someone would have some resource to go back and to train themselves, to readapt them, to reapply them. This is not very, this would be no different than, say, the writing of Sun Tzu's Art of War, in which the idea is so that generals have military generals in China had a basic structure for applying these methods, and that if peace should sustain, that there would be a way for these generals to train, to learn, to have knowledge that would be brought from experience, even though they would have no direct application of it. And this is very prevalent in Sun Bin's Art of War. For those of you who don't know who Sun Bin is, he was a protege of Sun Tzu. He expanded a great deal on what Sun Tzu had originally written in the Art of War. So what you have is that these texts are put down so that the knowledge will not be completely lost. And they most likely became prevalent either during the rise of warfare, when this knowledge had to be widespread among military units, regardless of what country you're talking about, or during the decline. So it becomes an interesting aspect to look at this. And because of that, you realize that a lot of these methodologies, training principles, everything else do not ever show up in Densho. Do not ever show up in records or anything else, and are very rare, and in fact do so even in historical documentation, which brings to light this element. Even though in the first video I somewhat attacked the Bujinkan, pointing out the massive fallacies and flaws and open deception they have in dealing with other ninjutsu schools and towards the pot calling the kettle black, it has to be understood that I have no problem with modern ninjutsu schools. I have no problem with modernizing ninjutsu. I have no problem with people inventing ninjutsu or reinventing ninjutsu. It would be no different than somebody inventing a style of karate or kickboxing or what have you. The issue comes into play when people are claiming lineage and tradition where none exist. And to be quite honest about it, that being said, no ninjutsu, as I am aware, has any sort of proof of lineage or anything else. So you're only looking at what you're being taught, at the elements that are being taught to you. If you want to go for punching and kicking, there's plenty of martial arts to do that. If you want to go for grappling, there's plenty of martial arts to do that. If you want to go for trapping and throws, there's plenty of martial arts to do that. If you want to learn weaponry, there's plenty of martial arts to do this. And it's not specifically something you need to worry about unless it's something you're specifically looking for. When it comes to ninjutsu, we've always had the popular, the pop culture image of the ninja as being some martial artist in a black suit jumping around with swords and throwing shuriken and sneaking into places, but we've never really thought of them as being in fact a medieval James Bond, if you will, which means that ninjutsu, even a modern style that was just created by some random guy, would have to involve things like cryptography, disguise. Disguise would have to go more than just changing your clothes and haircut or your hair color, but to actually playing a role and being that character. Um, there's so much there that has to be looked at. And when you get into the politics of it, again, you can see what it is because these things are missing in some groups and they attack other groups for having them. And the easiest thing to go after is the lineage because no lineage exists in any ninjutsu school. So the problem we have is that people are marketing in martial art, and because their martial art is laying claim to the ninja lineage, the ninja history, but they lack Densho. And knowing that every school lacks Densho, knowing that ninjutsu as a whole lacks any sort of proof for Densho, and even when you get into things like Katori Shinto Ryu, which is a verified Koru system which has a great deal of Densho listing it, when you get into this, when you go into the application of ninjutsu, it only mentions ninjutsu as something that is taught, and it is okuden. It is something that is taught verbally. It is a secret art that is not to be put down with basic things like how to cut with a sword or any of these basic elements that are there for people to study. So the the element we're getting into here is that when you're talking about politics, the politics is nothing more than marketing. It's based on who has something to market. Now, I prefer to market based on skills. I make no claim to a traditional ninja style. In fact, it's modern. If someone can show me that the traditional ninja during the feudal era of Japan used assault weapons and such, please, by all means, do. But they adapted, they applied modern technology as it manifested, and I do so as well. And trying to keep with the spirit of tradition, even though maybe perhaps not the lineage in and of itself. The element to look at here, again, is that no ninjutsu school has any Densho. So all the politics, all the attacks are always followed up with personal attacks, and this is where it gets very disheartening. When there's an army of internet trolls attacking people personally, trying to disrupt their business, trying to cause harm to their character, to slander their name, when these things occur, it's not only bad business, but it brings a great deal of shame and discredit to all ninjutsu, especially seeing that no one has a legitimate lineage. So the question to be asked is, what are you looking at? If you're looking for historical ninjutsu, the only thing we have is the manuals from that have been translated. And only recently have they been translated into English. Anthony Cummings is the only guy doing it at the moment. He's kind of running the monopoly, and now there's a few other people trying to get into it, creating alternate translations and adding to or taking away a little bit of things to try to verify their own lineage and their own claims. But again, this is nothing more than the politics of politics and trying to copycat to the market that already exists, thanks to Anthony, and trying to lay claim to a historical lineage that really no one has any claim to.